Hello, everyone. So today we're looking at part two of 4.2 transversals and parallel lines. I'm going to have you guys do is start with a warm up today, just asking you to name the pair of angles you see here. Okay, if you guys remember, here are the four different types of angles we learned yesterday: corresponding angles, same side interior angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles. All right, so go ahead and copy down this warm up and give it a try. What are angles one and two considered? Which are the four pairs? Okay, so just like in our last lesson, here's what I always recommend. First, realizing which of the lines are your parallel lines and which one is your transversal. All right, here's what I noticed. These are my two parallel lines. All right, this other line crossing over both of the parallel lines is considered the transversal. All right. Understanding that is important because the names of these pairs of angles are very closely related to which side of the transversal they're on and which side of the parallel lines they're on. Okay, so here's what I noticed. These two angles, one and two, are both on the same side of the transversal. They're both above. Okay, here's the other thing I noticed. They're both on the interior of the parallel lines. Okay, so same side of the transversal, interior of the parallel lines, that is same side interior, okay, which should make sense. It's right there in the name. All right, so that is what I'm hoping you got on this problem. If not, go ahead and write it out. So same side interior. All right, so yeah, today we're going to be focusing a bit more on these types of angles. Today we're going to be, I guess, focusing on their measures, all right, and the different rules. So let's just kind of recall that real quick. This slide here, you already have this on your notes from yesterday, so you might want to keep this in front of you as you're going through your notes and any assignments that we have on this. So you don't need to recopy this, but let me just point out a few things. All right, the corresponding angles here, the ones that are on the same side of our transversal and on the same side of our parallel lines, those angles are congruent to one another. All right, they are the same measure. Okay, and if you guys notice, alternate interiors are also congruent and alternate exteriors are also congruent. All right, all of these angles are congruent besides same side interiors. Okay, if you see the same side interiors, be careful. They're not equal. They're not congruent to one another. They are supplementary. They add to 180 degrees. Okay, so if you can just kind of remember that, that makes this, I guess, this assignment and these lessons today a little bit more straightforward. Okay, it's still important to know how to identify these. All right, so just real quick, let's go through these we haven't seen today. Alternate interior. Remember, that means they're on alternate sides of the transversal on the interior of the parallel lines. Okay, alternate exteriors, as you might guess, are on alternate sides of the transversal, but on the exterior, on the outside of our parallel lines. All right, so start memorizing these angles. You can imagine in this class, we're going to have a lot of problems where two lines are crossed by another line. Okay, so knowing what those angles are and knowing, I guess, the rules for them being, congruent or supplementary, it's really, really important. All right, so let's jump into it. Okay, so go ahead, take a minute, copy this example, and we will find these missing measures. Alrighty, so I guess always first things first, let's realize that these are our parallel lines. Here's something to know. These little symbols right here, these arrows on these lines, this is one way of them telling us that two lines are parallel to one another. If you ever see arrows on two lines, yeah, that means they're parallel. All right, so here are our parallel lines. Here is our transversal. Okay, and let's just kind of use what we know to find these missing measures. Okay, so first thing we know is that, this angle right here is 75 degrees. All right, so I'm kind of looking through this. There's a few things we could do. All right, here's, let me see, what do I want to point out first? There's so many things I could say right now. Let's just point out what other angle we could find using the four pairs of angles that we've been learning. Here's what I noticed. This 75-degree angle and this angle 2 are alternate exterior angles. And I know alternate exterior angles are congruent. They're the same. So if this one's 75 degrees, I know that angle 2 is also 75 degrees. Okay, and if we wanted to, we could go ahead and write that up in our picture here, 75 degrees. Okay, which by the way, when you find measures of angles and they're asking for multiple measures, I always recommend writing what you're finding onto your picture because it'll really help you find other things. Okay, so here is the next thing I notice. I'm going to erase these little arcs. Sorry, let me see. Okay, so here's the next thing I noticed. This angle 2 that we just found, that's 75 degrees. Okay, and this angle 3 are corresponding angles. Notice they're on the same side of the transversal, both to the left of the parallel lines. Okay, and I know, again, corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, so if angle 2 is 75 degrees, I know that angle 3 is 75 degrees. Okay, let's go ahead and write that down here. Okay, you guys might have noticed I didn't start with angle 1. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you start with. And by the way, angle 1, if we were to just know that this angle, pretend we hadn't found these two here, and we wanted to go find angle 1 using the fact that this is 75, this angle and this angle have no relationship. They are not part of our 4 types of angles. They're not corresponding. They're not same side interior. They're none of those things. So that's why I kind of ignored angle 1. Okay, for now. Okay, but now that I know these other 2 angles, we can use it to find angle 1. So I'm looking through and I'm thinking, do we have any more of these types of angles? I'm looking like the angles 1 and 3 don't fall into any categories. So here's what I need to do. I need to go back to what we've learned in the past. You guys might notice angles 1 and 2, they make a flat line. They're technically a linear pair. And I know that means they are supplementary. They add to 180 degrees. Okay, so if this is a 75-degree angle, you can probably do the math in your head. I know that angle 1 has to be 105 degrees. Okay, so using the rules that we've learned in the past few lessons still are going to show up all the time. Flat lines, as I always say, they show up everywhere. All right, and then you guys kind of notice, we know that this is 105. If we really wanted to, we could go and find the rest of these angles super quick. We don't need to, but I just want to make a point. We know that these are vertical angles, right? So this would also be 75 degrees, which by the way, I could have found angle 3 knowing that these were vertical angles if I wanted to. Okay, here's what else I know. These are same side interiors. I know that means they add to 180. If this is 75, this is 105. Okay, if this is 105, this is 105. Those are vertical angles. If that's 105, this is 105. Okay, so I could find all of these missing angles extremely quickly if I wanted to, but we are just doing the ones they ask for in the directions. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys try a problem a lot like this. Go ahead and find the measures of angles 1, 2, and 3. Copy these in your notes and try it out. Okay, so there's a few angles that we could find first. Really, we could find any 3 of these 3 angles first. And I encourage you to just do whatever comes easiest to you. If you noticed that this 130-degree angle and this angle 3 were vertical angles, you could have done that. If you noticed that this 130-degree angle and angle 1 were alternate interiors, you could have started with that. If you noticed that this 130 and this angle 2 were same side interiors, you could have started with that. Okay, so my point is there's a lot of directions to go on these. Do whatever shows up in your brain first. Okay, if I were doing this, I would maybe start with the fact that these are vertical angles. Okay, because the vertical angles, I see them quickly. So I would say, okay, I know that angle 3 is also 130 degrees. Vertical angles are congruent. So let's write that out. All right, so from there, I have a few directions I can go. Here's one thing. I could say that this angle here and this angle here are corresponding angles, same side of the transversal, same side, both above the parallel lines. And I know corresponding angles are also congruent. Okay, so that means this thing's 130 degrees as well. So angle 1 is 130. Okay, just by the way, I could have also used this 130 and notice that these were alternate interior angles and they also would have been congruent. Okay, there's a few ways to find these answers. Okay, last one I want to find is angle 2, and I have a few options. Here's the one I'm going to choose. I'm going to notice that this angle, I'm using a lot of colors here, but this angle here and this angle here are same side interior angles. And just a reminder, those are the kind of the weird ones. Same side interiors add to 180. Okay, so if this is 130, I know that this has to be 50 degrees, right, for them to add to 180 degrees. Okay, so angle 2, 50 degrees. Okay. Another way I could have found that this was 50 degrees is I could have noticed that these two angles make a flat line and they add to 180, and that would have been another way of doing it. Okay, all right, so let's keep moving. Okay, so from here, we're going to get weirder values into our angles, and they're going to ask us to find x. Remember, whenever you are asked to find x, that's just a way of saying make an equation. We need to make an equation out of this information. Okay, so first, let's figure out what we got. So I didn't highlight the last ones, but I'm going to go back to doing that. This is my transversal, and I can tell because of these arrows that these are my parallel lines. Okay, so what kind of angles do we have here? Well, here's what I noticed. They're on alternate sides of the transversal and on the interior of the parallel lines. Yeah, they're alternate interior angles. Okay, so, I like to put little arcs around them. You don't have to, but I think it looks nice. So yeah, they're alternate interiors. What is the rule for alternate interior angles? It looks like they are congruent. They are equal to one another. Okay, and that's exactly what I can do here to make my equation. I can say that this angle, 2x plus 5, equals this angle, 65. All right, that's the hard part, knowing how to read these angles and make an equation. Now we can solve this thing fairly easily. So looks like we're going to subtract 5 and divide by 2, right? So 2x equals 60 and divide by 2. Let's keep it red. So divide by 2, and it looks like we're going to be getting x equals 30. Okay, quick bonus question without even doing the math. If I were to plug 30 back into this angle, what would its measure be? What do you think? Okay, yeah, without doing the math, we would know if this is 65 degrees, this is 65 degrees, right? All right, let's try another together, and then I'll have you guys try one on your own. Okay, so go ahead, copy this problem, we'll do it together. Okay, so again, first things first, we got to figure out what we're dealing with. Okay, let me highlight. Here's our transversal, and here are our parallel lines. All right, so here's what we notice about this. These two angles here and here, which if you want to put arcs around them, you can. They're on the same side of the transversal. Here's the other thing. They're on the interior of our parallel lines. Same side of transversal, interior of parallel lines. Yeah, these are same side interiors. All right. And here's the thing. Same side interiors, they are not congruent. They are not equal to one another. They are supplementary. They add to 180. Okay. So I'm not going to do the same thing I did on the last problem. I'm going to add these together and set it equal to 180. Okay. It doesn't matter which angle you start with, by the way, when you write out your equation. So I'm going to start with x minus 2, add it to the other angle, 4x plus 2, and I know that they add to 180 degrees. All right, just kind of, something to take notice. You're probably already noticing we do a lot of equations where we're either adding them to 180 or setting them equal to one another. That is a very, very common thing in this class. The tricky part is not getting them mixed up, not doing one when you should be doing the other. Like on this problem, it might have been tempting to set these equal to one another, but no, that's not what these angles do. Okay, so we have variables already on the same side. We can combine them. 1x and 4x is a 5x. A negative 2 plus 2 gives me a 0, right? I could put plus 0, but I don't need to. They just disappear, and I get equals 180. And this is where I would probably grab my calculator because I don't want to mess up. And I get 36 when I divide 5 into 180. Okay. And, just always double checking, is that what they wanted? Do they want X? Yeah, it says find X. Just be careful because sometimes they'll want us to plug X back in and get the measure of an angle, which, we could do easily here. If we plugged it into this one, 36 minus 2, we get 34 degrees, right? And then if these add to 180, we could find this other one fairly quickly, right? It looks like this would be like, what, 146? All right. So just things to keep in mind if they had asked us to plug these numbers in, but they didn't. All right, so I'm gonna have you guys go ahead and try a couple of these on your own. Be careful, first identify what type of angles you have, and then figure out what kind of equation you need to make to solve for X. Okay, try both of these out. All right, so on this first one here, here's what I notice. Transversal, this line, parallel lines, these lines, all right? And our angles, just to highlight them, and I always kind of recommend putting the little arcs because it kind of guides your eye. Same side of our transversal, same side of our parallel lines, both to the right of them, okay? When it's on the same side, these are corresponding angles, all right? Okay, so now that we know that they're corresponding angles, flipping back, the rule of corresponding angles, oops, too far, is that they are congruent. Okay, so on this problem, I'm hoping you guys set these values equal to one another and solve. So 5x minus 24 equals 91. Okay, and then from here, real quick, we would just add them together, or sorry, add the 24 to both sides and then divide by the 5. So 5x equals, what do we get? 115. And then 5 goes into 115. Okay, I'm going to skip showing divided by 5. 5 goes into 115 23 times. Okay, which, something, if you're getting, if you're comfortable with doing these, solving these simple solving steps, I don't mind if you don't show divided by 5, divided by 5. If you can just do it, I'm perfectly okay with that. But I still do want to see your steps as you make your way to your answer. Okay, number 2 here. Here's my transversal. Here are my parallel lines. Right, here's what I notice. These two angles here are also on the same side of the transversal, right? Just like the last problem, okay? But they are not on the same side of the parallel lines. They are on the interior of the parallel lines. These are same side interior. And if you guys remember, these are the kind of the weird ones. They are not equal to one another. They are supplementary. They add to 180. So I'm hoping that you guys said, okay, this angle, x plus 2, plus this angle equals 180. Right, from here, looks like we can combine these. We get x plus 80 equals 180. Okay, and if I were doing this, I would just do this in my head. I know if I subtract 80 from both sides, I'm going to get x equals 100. Right, and there we go. Cool, guys. So yeah, a lot of the stuff we've been learning the last chapter or so kind of coming together in this lesson. It's a good one. Hopefully you're starting to get comfortable on identifying these pairs of angles and using some algebra to solve for x. Okay, I'll see you guys in class. Bye.